All right. Well, we're going to move from the discussion of missionaries and ministry to foreign residents to talking about the international slash bilingual church and foreign residents. So one of the developments that's taken place in the last, 10, 15 years in Japan has been a real increase in the number of international bilingual churches. And I've been part of one of these churches myself, and I've also been in a more traditional Japanese church. And so there are some distinctives that I think are really important to notice. And when I was learning that the Japanese church was beginning to discuss more about this issue of how to minister to foreign residents and how to think about foreign residents, my first thought was, well, there's a group of people that are doing that a whole lot already. And so anyways, we wanted to give a chance just to hear from just two representatives. So with me today, I'm gonna let these guys introduce themselves, but we have pastors of two different international and bilingual churches. Sama Sensei, do you say international church at Grace Harbor or just bilingual church? No distinction. Okay, got it. So anyways, we'll go ahead and kick off by having these guys introduce themselves.
My name is Jay Greer. I serve with a church that is here in Tokyo. We meet in Harajuku right now, and it's called Mustard Seed Christian Church. I've been in Japan for 16 years now, doing some church planting and learning as we go.
My name is Seima Aoyagi, planting church in Toyosu, Tsukishima area, so-called like a Tokyo Bay area with a lot of high rises. New people moving to the area. Our central region vacation happening using the shopping mall to have a worship service. We are 9 years into the church right now. It's a green mic on.
Can you guys actually share a microphone? I think that one's dead. It's not working very well. Thank you very much. Yeah. Share the brotherhood of Christ. Awesome. Thank you guys. So tell me about your churches as it relates to foreign residents. Do you have foreign residents at your church? Do you mean to have foreign residents at your church? Are you happy that you have foreign residents at your church? What is your experience like?
Yeah, we have Gaikokujin foreign residents attending our church. About 40% is the ratio of the non-Japanese speaking people, representing like 10 nationalities: Chinese, Singapore, Australian, Vietnamese, American, British, Brazil, German, Puerto Rican, Kenya. So variety of people coming from different parts of the world.
We also have foreign residents. I am one of them, in case you guys didn't notice yet. I'm not Japanese. So we have a great variety of people coming through. You're asking earlier, we don't use the word international. We do say we're a bilingual church, but mostly we're just trying to focus mostly on the gospel, trying to make sure that we're putting Jesus front and center in what we do. Our breakdown, counting is really difficult because as you start to count who's Japanese and who's not, you start to ask, is it blood? Is it the passport? Is it culture of where you grew up? Or if you're half Japanese? So counting is really tricky. We'll say that. However, I'm actually part of a small network of a few churches in Japan, and it is kind of church to church, the average being about 50% Japanese, 50% Iroiro. But that could be different. Our church in Kobe and our church in Sendai have a higher percentage of Japanese people. We in Tokyo have a lower percentage. I would say probably 40% Japanese, 60% foreigners from all over the place. An anecdote of this was about, it was sometime last month. In an effort to see people come back after Christmas, we advertised an international potluck. We said, bring a food from your home country or hometown. And we had a lot of food from all over the world, but we regularly have 6 continents represented. But in that way, what we're trying to do is show that we're celebrating the diversity that's there. in the body of Christ.
Thank you. And Jay, do you mind sharing a little bit about Mustard Seed Network that you're part of as well?
Yeah, like I said, a small network of churches in urban Japan. The elevator version of this is we're trying to do church planting with a focus on reaching the 99% with the gospel. As much as we possibly can, trying to share the good news with people who haven't heard it. And we've been around for 14 years now, starting in the city of Nagoya.
When you say 99, yeah, that's the best place you could possibly.
It's a great spot.
When you say 99%, who are the
99% lost people in Japan. Lost people in Japan. So
lost people?
lost people in Japan. That's a good clarifier. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, that's what we're doing today. So when you guys first sensed the call to ministry and were thinking, you know, maybe I'm going to be a pastor, or maybe I'm going to serve the Lord, did you imagine that a kind of large focus of your church, a large focus of your kind of journey to Japan, and same as I say, you know, serving as a pastor in Japan, was going to include ministering to foreign residents? Like, was that something that was part of your idea early on, or is it something that came to you later?
Well, yes and no. You know, we are called to this area of the Tokyo waterfront. So to be a salt and light in that area, we definitely need to make the Japanese as the primary focus, because that's the majority of the people who live over there. But at the same time, there are a good number of the foreigners, non-Japanese, working, studying in the area. I think it's about less than 10%, 6 to 7, 8%. That's so you need to see how we could also be a blessing for that people. Not so much, well, probably for the missional, not so much of the missional focus, but you know, as the representation of the gospel embodiment, we need to always be attentively caring for the minorities. The scripture verse that came to my mind is Leviticus 19, verse 33. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So how you treat them, how you see them, really shows what the gospel is for you. So we want to be also welcoming for those non-Japanese people. So
That's great. Thank you.
That's such good stuff. When you ask, this question is interesting because when you ask like what we were thinking when we first moved here, we were thinking very little. I was just marked by extreme ignorance, and so trying to figure things out. Plenty of passion. So yeah, we really had no idea what we were doing in terms of, we had a plan. You can make a plan in America. When you come, then you change your plan. So it's a very different look than what we had. How we got to where we are now, honestly, came through the Word of God and repentance for us. So all of these things come down to stories. There was a time planting in Nagoya where we were very new, and we noticed that as people are coming, you know, you're really reaching out to someone and making sure, oh my goodness, here's a Japanese businessman. How are you doing? It's great to see you. Let's meet you here. Would you like to sit here? This is really great. And then we noticed at one of our staff meetings, it's like 4 or 5 weeks, a woman named Vivian had been coming, kind of saying, has anyone reached out to Vivian? And kind of everyone was saying, no, I don't think so. Okay, well, come to find out, she's half Japanese. She speaks Japanese. She's half Brazilian, but her name's Vivian, and she doesn't look Japanese. And so we realized this woman has come into church because she wants to hear the gospel, fully loved by God. And we had not reached out to her, and James 2 just cut us to the heart. We're realizing we have committed the sin of partiality. Because this woman did not decide who her parents would be. And we then followed up with her, and she's saying, I'm coming to church because I want to know about God. We're saying, wow, did we mess up here? we have to reach out to this woman and share the gospel with her in Nihongo. This is her language. And so there was a moment of huge repentance for us where we said, we are going to share the good news with every single person that God brings into our orbit. It just so happens if you do ministry in this orbit, the 99%, a ton of them are Japanese. So you got to reach a ton of Japanese people. But that's one of the ways that we wound up doing church the way that we're doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Tell me about Bilingual Church. What is it like? Why do you do it? How is it kind of strategic or helpful? Or tell me more about Bilingual Church.
We do bilingual church with the primary Japanese being the first language. It's not difficult as I'm a Japanese pastor. So although I understand and speak in English, but I don't speak English much at my church. So, but at the same time, bilingual church, as a bilingual church, we make every Japanese to be translated into English. So the worship service is side by side. I speak, and then the translator speaks as well. So that's how we present how we do the bilingual church. And the reason why we do this is because simply because we want to be a blessing for the non-Japanese people, and but and also I think two more reasons is that we know that the future of the church will be the cross cultural. If you read Revelations, that's the multiple languages, people to get together and worship together. So that's a that's the layout of the global kingdom in God's vision. So we want to, let the people to have the foretaste of it. So that's another reason. Probably third is in our area, the majority of Japanese still also has some interest into the cross-culture experience. So that's the major reason that we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have, it's worth saying, we have a big DNA document of how we do church. One of the things not written in our DNA document is the word bilingual. We recognize that that is helpful right now, but I don't know if it was helpful 50 years ago. I don't know if it's going to be helpful 50 years from now. And also, we're in large cities. So, we see that there is something very helpful about this. I could get conspiracy theorists really excited to say, who knows what Google has figured out for us with language in 10 years from now, or AI's got it all cracked, or whatever. But for right now, we need to have translation to be able to have a diverse, beautiful community. It's very helpful. I think everyone here wants to reach Japanese people. That's not the question. It's how. And with more and more international families, with more and more international marriages, and just the numbers, if you look at all the numbers on the rapid diversification of Japan, we have to have some mechanism that's in place. Now, I would encourage people, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I would encourage people that if they're thinking of how do I engage with the multicultural world in Japan, the answer is not necessarily bilingual. I've been to churches with, and this was mentioned an hour ago, but churches that are all Nihongo, but if you look, it's 50% Japanese and 50% mix of various foreigners. And so it's really, you're wanting to make the gospel the center, and then there's decisions you'll make about your liturgy, about your worship, that will influence, who finds this to be accessible. But it has a lot of, bilingual church has a lot of work. When you talk about literally doubling everything, it's literally doubling everything. And so to do it well takes a lot of work. But I think the payoff, some of what Sam is mentioning, of getting to worship with so many different kinds of people is a beautiful foretaste of the kingdom in heaven.
Yeah, thank you. Both of you guys mentioned bilingual church with reference to outreach to Japanese people. So you're adding English to try to reach Japanese people who maybe don't speak English or don't speak English well. Can you explain the kind of philosophy of that? Like, how does that work, or how is that strategic for potentially reaching Japanese people?
Yeah, I think, like has been mentioned, I think there's a lot of people that are interested um, in English. It's hard for me as an American to identify with that. We don't have a language that if we feel like, oh, if I just knew this language, so many doors would swing open for me. But that is how a lot of people in Japan feel. That's how a lot of people around the world feel. And so I remember talking with one of our Japanese teammates in Osaka and saying, hey, I'm thinking we should start an outreach event that's all Nihongo. Wouldn't that be cool? And he's like, why in the world would you want to do that? And I thought you would be excited about this. And he said, no. For Japanese people to go to church, they need an iwake. And I thought, okay, what do you mean by this? But he's saying, like, no Japanese person who is not a Christian is going to show up to church saying, I just really have a hole in my heart, or I'm seeking God, or I want to know the purpose of life, and so I'm just trying to understand spiritual stuff. Very few people are in that category. If I have some iwake, some kind of excuse to say, I'm just here for the English, actually, really, I'm depressed and I'm trying to find the meaning of life. At least they can say, this is why I'm here, and allows them to save face. This is what he was telling me. And I thought, that's actually pretty smart. So we ended up starting another bilingual outreach on Wednesday nights, is how that got there. So I think there is a pocket of Japan that is very interested in all things international and bilingual. I think if we look around at a lot of corporations, I don't think Apple, Starbucks, Disney, these things are not trying to figure out how to do this. McDonald's, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are international in Japan that are incredibly successful. The other thing is asking the question, what is the very best favor that we could give to the future of the Japanese church? How do we set them up for the brightest gospel-centered future out there? And I think making sure that we are creating churches where all people are welcomed and all people are loved, and we are saying our number one identity is in Christ and not our bloodline when we create that kind of church, I think that's the best favor that we can give to the future of Japan with the way that things are going.
How is bilingual church helpful for reaching Japanese?
Yes, our church doesn't have like an English Bible study or English learning.
No eikaiwa.
No eikaiwa. We don't have eikaiwa at all.
How can you be a real church without?
That's what we're trying to be here. Yeah. But at the same time, I think just providing worship service in two languages make the church welcoming place for the non-Japanese people. And I think a lot of Japanese people, we also have a good number of non-Christians. I think they come simply enjoying this kind of international flavor, even though some of those non-Japanese people doesn't speak English. And very little of Japanese, but just being in that kind of international flavor, I think helps the kind of bar down for non-Japanese people to come. And also, I think also this cross-cultural experience, like Chinese people had a gyoza, a dumpling party, and invited us and non-Christian Japanese as well, and we had a very good time, cross-cultural experience. Another thing is like as we are now we have a prayer focus praying for our church to be a blessing for the non-Japanese residents or sojourners in our area. I think people have more eyes and compassion for those who are potentially kind of struggling living in Japan, try to learn Japanese and try to live their life up. Some of us are talking about the kind of potential of doing like a JSL, Japanese as a second language kind of ministry. And for that kind of venue, non-Christian Japanese also are interested in. I want to help, if there's any way that I could be a help. So I think, like any mercy ministry could be a venue to bring non-Christian Japanese into it. So like this, how church could be a blessing for the foreigners who are new to Japan, um, opens up the door for the non-Christian Japanese to be also feeling like they want to be a part of it.
That's great. Thank you, Sam. Um, are there any challenges to pastoring a multicultural church, especially bilingually? Any challenges specifically about pastoring foreign residents in Japan?
Um, I feel like the how we shepherd those non-Japanese people are through just providing bilingual service, and that's kind of a very minimum way of serving. So I feel bad that I'm not be able to provide much opportunity for, you know, for non-Japanese speaking people to feel nurtured, trained, equipped. So maybe so that's the as a pastor, I feel bad, you know.
Do you feel like you do that better for the Japanese congregation?
I do most of those energy pouring out to the Japanese. So this is this is a training, but I'm sorry, this is only for Japanese. I have many occasions that I have to say that way. So so I feel bad that I'm not be shepherding well. And also because of that, I feel a little bit of still not doing my job to equip those non non-Japanese people to be a missionary to their Japanese co-workers enough. So
Thanks.
Challenges, that's what we're saying,
Yeah.
challenges. Yeah, I think we've had challenges in a diverse church since Acts chapter 6, and it's been really, really tricky where you have people with multilingual backgrounds coming together, and you're trying to say, how do we care for everyone equally? That was a struggle. Hey, our Greek-speaking widows aren't getting any food. How do we? Well, we have to put extra effort. Let's appoint these guys to help these people out. And apparently, the problem persisted because we see it pop up again in Galatians and Ephesians and Romans, and so we know that having an all nations church is difficult, has been difficult, will be difficult. I making sure that we're making things available to everyone is hard. We're also getting people who come with another language that is their main language, their heart language. So we have more and more people at our church right now who are Chinese, but are tuning into the sermon either in English or in Japanese. Some in all three, with a fourth to spare. But how do we care for those people? I'm having to lean on more people and say, hey, could you help me? This person really needs I think they need a study Bible. Can you help me find a Chinese study Bible? These kinds of things where I'm needing to lean on others in the church to help care for, making sure there's someone in the church. Doesn't necessarily need to be me. I would love to help any way I can, but how are we making sure you can have some kind of soul care, some kind of shepherding from someone in the church, regardless of your main linguistic background?
Do you guys think that kind of bilingual ministry or bilingual church is a magic bullet for reaching Japan or reaching Japanese people?
No.
no.
Okay, good. I didn't assume you did, but I thought it might be helpful to state that. I know that's a question a lot of people have. This may be the last we have time for. So if there's a Japanese pastor and due to changing demographics, there's more foreign residents that are in his neighborhood and they are now coming to his church. He's got more foreign residents coming to his church. And he said, you guys pastor, churches that are more international than my church, but my church is starting to become like that a little bit. How do I do this? What advice would you give? How would you recommend he approach that challenge?
Probably depends on what kind of foreigners
Mhm.
are there. But assuming there are more Southeast Asians, and if that's the case, there are a lot for the Japanese church. The more indigenous the church is, that is such a jewel for those non-Japanese people who are new to Japan. They want to be welcomed. They want to have friendship, fellowship with the Japanese local people, And the church could be a place that, where those, new to Japan to feel welcomed and have a, enjoy the safe place. So I think even this a small thing, like I just open up the church building for just small amount of time in per week and inviting those non-Japanese people, and that will be a huge blessing. Maybe just kind of start small, how we could be a blessing for those who people live in that neighborhood.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we could have a really long discussion on minutia, little bitty details on how to do those things well at church, but try to go big picture a little bit. I would first say to try to make sure that the identity of your church remains, we're all about Jesus, we're all about the gospel. Once you make the identity of your church either international, foreign, bilingual, make sure that the number one thing is we're talking about your creator who loves you. That's what you're here for. The next piece is, I would say, to try your best to not apologize for diversity. The more that you do, the more awkward it becomes. If you think about doing that in a different context, it's unthinkable. A pastor in Chicago saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry about all the various ethnicities we have here today. I hope you all like our church." It's unthinkable. This guy is canceled. It's gone. Forget. It's a terrible idea. Let's not apologize for that. Let's show we really care about everyone. A gospel transformed heart will care and love will love everyone, and therefore you get to celebrate all kinds of things. You are wanting to reach people in Japan. If you have 50 foreigners come in, you just had 50 evangelists. Romans 1:16 says the gospel is the power unto salvation. It doesn't matter whose mouth it's in. Equip those people to go and take that good news to lost people in Japan.
Okay, sorry, I have one more. So let's say a missionary kind of, approaches you and they have a question. They say, why should we even bother ministering to foreign residents? Like, I came here to reach Japanese people. Why should I include this as part of my focus when I'm already kind of feeling busy? Not that you're going to force them to do it, but do you have an answer? Because I got to think about it.
I don't know. I think I just I said this, but I think the how you care for those people who are in your neighbor as the even though it's the minority, it really shows what the gospel is. So that's I think that's very crucial. It's not so much of your kind of a success or effort being paid, but more like it really shows what you believe. So and Jesus said, who become the neighbors. And in your neighbors, if you have the non-Japanese people there, you need to find a way. At least you need to start praying how you could be a blessing for them.
Eloquent and wonderful. Thank you. Because I think this is just so wonderful to hear this coming from Sema. And it's an interesting question. You've created a straw man for me here, so I'll try to be nice to him. But I really do feel that's kind of, it's a missionary specific question. I don't know if the lost people that I'm trying to reach in Japan are thinking about that. And so the more focused we are on the 99%, I think that question kind of fades into the background. I think they would feel oddly targeted if I said, I moved here to try to I want to tell only you Japanese people about the gospel. I think that feels odd to non-Christian Japanese people who have never picked up a missiology book or anything like that. Now, obviously, there's good things to discuss and things that we need to think about. This is not simple. Who said it's complex? They're correct. However, I think that the people we're trying to reach think about this very, very differently.
Thank you, Jay. That's really good. Okay, we want to open the floor now for some Q&A, and I'm going to see if one of these mics over here is charged up so it's working better than this one that's totally dead. And I'm just holding it because it's symbolic.
So I imagine like your churches are really attractive to people who've lived overseas or have like some exposure to international culture. Do you get any Japanese people who have no like kind of interest in or kind of no like they can't speak English, they've no exposure to overseas? And if so, like what kind of proportion?
Uh, I think he might have a different answer because just by virtue of the fact that I'm leading the church, many of those people won't be there, and I think that's wonderful if they go to a different church. And we need a diversity of churches to reach a very, very diverse population. Once again, I just have stories. There's a woman who came to our church in Osaka, heard the gospel. We walked her through the gospel. She believed, she was baptized, she started growing. I think 6 to 8 months she was in our church plant. And then she came to me, I could tell she was nervous, and she said, I've been thinking, and I really would like a Japanese pastor, and so I think I might have to move churches. I said, that's wonderful. Where do you live? She told me. I was like, I know a great church down there. Let me contact. I'll introduce you. All church plants should want to raise all boats. And when we have those people, that's wonderful. Okay, how do we now, how do we introduce them? How do we then take them to someone else? I would just love if they come in the door and hear something about Jesus, and then we get them to the church that fits their needs. I think that's great. We might have a different answer.
I try to make the ratio of the non-Japanese people to be below like a 50%. Right now it's about 40%, so that's a kind of ideal size. But there's still people, some Japanese people feel a little bit intimidated by that atmosphere. I have a 70 years old lady attending our church. When she first came, she was a little bit intimidated with that. But at the same time, it's more like an educational process. And now she understands how she could be a blessing for those, young Vietnamese girl who came to Japan, doesn't speak in Japanese, but want to be, make friends, and how those 80, 70 years old lady could be a good friend to her, really, made her to feel like she could be used. So I think it's a process of relearning, learning the gospel context, how the gospel really breaks down the walls between us. I think.
Thanks, Simon.
In bilingual churches, when you have the members meetings, how do they relate with each other? For example, when they have to make some decisions, we foreigners think a little bit different. Let's say we make very interesting not decision, but how do you say in English? Oh, I forgot the word. Huh? A point, yes. Let's say a point. How do you deal with the decisions making? Because some Japanese feel a little bit not very comfortable for what we suggest.
I think I as a leader, Japanese leader, I make decision in more like a Japanese way.
Okay.
And any meeting that we do, it's primarily in Japanese. So I think if you speak in Japanese and try to, I think by speaking in Japanese, I think how you talk, how you discuss, become a little bit more Japanese way. So I think so. Um, so of course there are opinions, and we hear those opinions carefully, but we probably make the decision more Japanese way than non-Japanese way.
Yeah, for all of the talk give towards the beauty of the diverse church of all nations, we need to also be culturally aware and sensitive. There's yeah, deferring to Japanese people, Japanese culture and customs in Japan does not contradict anything else that we've talked about. So when we're making decisions to say, hey, this, we might need to talk about this in this way. Some neimawashi might be needed to just kind of talk about this and think about this and roll out this decision in this way. We're still going to do that as best as we possibly can. We have also had many times in our church where we've had to take people aside and say, hey, I'm sorry, but I don't know if you are aware, but that was very culturally insensitive. You're going to need to approach that a different way or do that differently next time. And it could be just a simple opportunity for discipleship for that person who didn't mean to, but stepped on a cultural value.
I think we've been appropriately talking about the interface between the bilingual church and the missionary community, which is really interesting for us. I'm curious, what has your experience been with the broader Japanese church as a bilingual church?
I mean, varied. Lots of various interactions that have been both very positive and also I don't want to say negative, but more okay, you're doing your thing over here, and they kind of wish us well. And so we're wanting to be as open-handed and collaborate as much as we possibly can. Once again, it comes down to stories for me, where I could have really encouraging stories of a few churches that we've been able to network with, and it's been very good. But I would never say it's always only easy. Certainly, it's tricky at times. I think most churches, probably anywhere, though, if you said, how are things in Springfield, Missouri, how with the other churches, some of them really great, and some of them it's not so easy to make inroads. So varied.
I think even though our church background is different, but people here, when I share about a story how the Vietnamese became a Christian, and even through the online, Vietnamese start to attend our online worship service, invited by his sister, who became a Christian in Japan, and how our church is now hiring her as our intern, and so that Vietnamese girl is serving as an intern at a church and try to bring church people to help the retainees in the Ibaraki area or Shinagawa area. Just seeing those the gospel movement and fruit, and how we could be a blessing, how we can reach out to those a lot of non-Japanese speaking people who use gospel. I think the Japanese church kind of feel the touch. They understand the value and they want to be a part of it. And so I think, even though the demographic is different, but when it's clear that we are doing for the gospel, it's that unites us together.
So earlier, the topic of contextualization came up a little bit. So I was just curious, with maybe sharing the gospel slightly differently to different background people. When you have a multicultural group that's gathering, how do you handle contextualization when sharing the gospel, as well as when you're trying to equip people to go out and share the gospel with others?
Great question. I'm sure that whatever was said earlier about contextualization is far more eloquent than anything that I will say, but here I go. I think that we are trying to contextualize, and sometimes that means painting with very broad strokes, right? However, I think many good evangelists are not only doing broad strokes, but also are getting to know the individual. So I'm not only figuring out, okay, what country are you from? What language are you from? But okay, you specifically, what kind of person are you? How do you think? How do you reason? Do you have kids? Do you work? And you're trying to learn about them. So I think, the contextualization is not, I think, the question of how do you contextualize to all of Japan? It's like, does all of Japan like baseball? A lot, but you know, you need to get to understand that individual. So people need to do the hard work of getting to know their church. Uh, and it could be a very, very diverse church, but most churches around the world are. Where you're needing to really get to understand these are the people that we have. And I'm not giving you any incredibly insightful answer except to say there's no easy way to do it. I think we have to teach the gospel, and then here's the really hard thing. Now we're teaching people to go and contextualize that to the person in front of them, and that's hard work.
You said well. So. And probably I add a little bit whenever I preach, I try to be mindful about those people from outside of Japan, and so that they can feel that the gospel is preaching into their context. But it's just a part of the broad stroke, so I need to do more. Well, I hear, yeah, I agree to you that the best contextualization happens to the more customized way.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. And we're going to go into our table discussions. This will be our last table discussion. So, enjoy it, soak it up, and see you in a few minutes.